some uses for Azure Spatial Anchors. There are multiple apps that you can create with Azure Spatial Anchors. A really good use case is anytime that you need to tie a specific information to a specific place. For example, if you're in a big building and if you want your users to find their way around, you can put breadcrumbs around and they can detect these spatial anchors and find their way. Another good use case is if you're in a big supermarket or a warehouse and it's really hard to know where things are, you can put specific product information to specific places. So when you're far away, you can see which way to go depending on your purpose. And these are all business use cases. For a more fun application, check out Minecraft Earth.
In Moth and Flame, we're a virtual reality company, and we've been working in virtual reality for over 7 years now. For the last 4 years, we've been working on building out our storytelling platform. And the way that this platform works is it merges natural language processing with photorealistic video, such that you can create an experience where you can talk to a character and that character can respond to your words. And then based on the choices you make, based on how you phrase different things, the story evolves in a choose your own adventure kind of way. What's been just incredible in watching this technology evolve is that who the platform is made for, it's for Hollywood storytellers and renowned subject matter experts in the areas of learning and training. So to be kind of on the sidelines as these brilliant minds, the best in Hollywood storytelling to the best in learning, get to work together and create scenarios, and then we watch it come to life as it gets published by our platform. VR is an incredible tool for learning, and especially when you bring conversation into it. When you say something out loud, it's just a different thing is happening in your mind and in your body than if you're tapping or if you're typing or however it is that you're interacting with a normal keyboard. That's the reason Socrates didn't believe in writing, because when you read a book, the book can't talk back. The best form of education is through conversation. And what we're seeing is HR departments really falling in love with the power of this tool. One of the biggest reasons why is because in program after program, it outperforms KPIs on everything from building confidence, memory retention, behavior change. And because of that, the power of scenario-based learning, the ability to scale one-to-one conversational training is possible now in ways that it just hasn't been before this technology existed. Hi, I'm Kevin Cornish. I'm the founder and CEO of Moth and Flame, and I'm really excited to get to be here with you guys virtually and talk to you a little bit about virtual reality and especially where virtual reality is today and how far it's come over the last 7 years since since Oculus first was purchased by Facebook. We started the virtual reality company at Moth and Flame in 2015, and it all started because of one moment, which was I was shooting a music video with Taylor Swift, and I got to shoot with a 360 camera. And on that shoot, we shot a bunch of stuff, did a bunch of tests and a bunch of experiments. It was one of her friends' birthdays, and we kind of did a bunch of stuff around that. But there was one moment that I really was totally blown away by when I saw it in editing, which was there was a moment where she talked to the camera. And so here I was in a headset, one of my first times in virtual reality, and I was looking at a screen, and there was somebody on that screen talking to me. And when somebody pays attention to you, you really, it does something to your body. It makes you feel special. And that's what I felt inside that virtual reality headset. And I had come from film, and so everything that I had done up until that point was thinking about stories as two characters on screen having emotions for each other. And all of a sudden, here was this medium where it wasn't about the characters on screen and the relationships that they had with each other. It was about somebody on a screen and the relationship that they could have with me. And that's the reason why virtual reality is unlike any medium that's come before. That one-to-one connection that happens inside of the headset, and what we've seen over the years in terms of ways that this technology could create new experiences, create new emotions, create new impact, create really new change in how people behave and how people see the world. That was just the first kind of light bulb moment in what's been an incredible journey these last 7 years of watching this new technology that, as we see today, there's stories about the metaverse on a daily basis as this thing that has become completely mainstream. And as we know from what's happening at Meta, what's happening at Apple and all these other kind of tech leaders, the next decade is going to be defined by the immersive world, whatever name you want to call it, if it's Web3, if it's the metaverse. This idea that what exists behind the screens is not a flat world, but actually the screens are windows into a bigger world. That is going to define everything about visual technology in the future. So after that first experience and seeing the magic in the editing room with the power of virtual reality, we got obsessed with what's that next generation of storytelling, what's the way to use this medium to do something that had never been done before and really get the most out of it. And thinking about, somebody's talking to you, that's interesting because you feel the attention, but what if you could talk to them? And what if they responded to the words that you said? That was a question that we asked, and we said, how do we do this? There's got to be a way, and this was kind of 2016, so the kind of some of the cloud-based natural language processing APIs were starting to get more accessible. And just over the course of a weekend, we hacked something together where you could go into virtual reality and you can speak to a character, and the character's responses responded to your voice as if you were having a conversation with them. And it was so magical because so much of our lives are typing like this, and this kind of the way that we hold our bodies or the way that we're disconnected with the things that we say when we're just typing them, compared to when you say something out loud. Your voice is a muscle. And when you engage with that muscle, the things that you say have more meaning. And what we saw is that we would bring people in to show this demo, and they would speak out loud, and their body language would change based on what the character was saying. The tone of voice that they were using would change based on the context that the conversation was taking. And it was something unlike anything that I'd ever seen, because so much of film is the audience sitting back and just watching. And all of a sudden, we were making these movies that the people watching them could talk to, and the movies would change based on what those people would say. And in the years that followed that, we have had an opportunity to bring this technology to one use case after another, and one that was just magical to get a chance to work with was a project that we were invited to work on with Accenture to help train foster care child welfare workers. And what was really, really incredible about watching this program come to life, and now tens of thousands of caseworkers have done it, and stories have been done about it, and you will go into rooms and you'll give headsets to a bunch of people, and they will all go through the exact same experience, and they'll all say different things, and they'll all come out of that experience with very, very different opinions. And what happens when people have the different opinions and they have the shared experience of virtual reality to talk about is that they then want to express their opinions, and the dialogue that comes out of it is incredibly productive for opening people's minds. And that's the power of virtual reality. So in the experience, you're in a trailer park, you're going to go into a trailer and talk to a family. And when you go into that trailer, what you see is there's red Solo cups, there's junk food, the place is a mess, and a lot of other things that could have stereotypes attached to them. And you sit down, you have one at a time, you talk to each family member. And over the course of each conversation, first with the mom, where you hear the stories from her perspective, and then with the boyfriend, where you hear his perspective, and then with the daughter, you have the opportunity to ask questions that either confirm your biases or ask questions that show you have an open mind and allow them, these characters, to be open with you about what's really going on so that you can really hear the full story.
Avenues is an opportunity to practice the universal skills needed when working with families.
A couple highlights of some of just the most amazing things that we saw happen in this journey of watching virtual reality come to life and watching the world adopt it was one of them was there was an incredible program that we got invited to do with Accenture. And it was to help train child welfare workers going through one of the most difficult conversations that they have in that profession, which is there's a home where there has been a claim that there's been violence towards a child, and you as this caseworker need to go into that home and have conversations with the people, the mother, the boyfriend, the daughter. And at the end of those conversations, you need to make a decision about, is this a safe place for this home, for this child, or does the kid need to be brought into foster care? And this is such a difficult conversation because you're talking to people as an authority figure in their house where there are class issues and there are race issues and people are uncomfortable and people make mistakes and people are, when they get nervous and when they get scared, they're not good at communicating. And to do a great job in this really difficult situation requires skills of making somebody who's at their lowest point in life, somebody's about to take away their child. How do you make that person comfortable? And how do you communicate with them on their terms so they feel like they can open up to you and tell you the truth about what's going on, so you're not making your judgments based on assumptions. So the way that this worked was we had an incredible subject matter expert from the Accenture team, Molly Tierney, who has dedicated her life to both social justice and with decades in the foster care system. And she had some incredible insight about the conversational patterns that great caseworkers have. One was young caseworkers who think that they know more than they actually do ask leading questions and they get yes or no answers. And when you get yes or no answers, you don't get a lot of information. Whereas the seasoned caseworkers, they know that they don't know what they don't know. And so they ask open-ended questions, not out of a specific purpose, but just out of exploration and curiosity, and then new information comes out. So the way that this experience was designed was, in the experience, it uses natural language processing, so it recognizes your voice, recognizes what you say, and then it gives you different options on different ways to ask different questions and different language to use. And some of the questions are yes or no questions, and some of the questions are open-ended. And if you ask the yes or no questions, the information that you get meets your assumptions, matches your biases. The thing that's on the surface, that's what you're going to take away from going into this house. If you ask the open-ended questions, you learn that there's more to the story than what was underneath the surface. Over the years, we've had the opportunity to see organizations from all different types of workforces latch onto this technology of these simulated conversations and see how it could provide value to what it is that they're trying to train for. Something just so that you have it in your mind. In these experiences, it's really important that the technology wasn't talking to an avatar or making it feel like you were talking to a cartoon, but really that you're talking to a real person that was a real actor, and that photorealism, your mind knows when it sees a face, when it sees an expression, that it sparks something in the mind that creates an emotional connection. And what we've seen from this emotional connection, kind of program after program in one discipline or another, is that the intended goal of whatever the learning and development leaders are who are behind the program is that it works. So just kind of give some examples about some KPIs that different programs have wanted. We had a suicide prevention program where they had been training this with PowerPoint, and all the feedback was people weren't engaged, and as a result, it just wasn't working. They'd been getting 22% user satisfaction scores, and they had to do something better. And they said, how can we use technology? How can we use innovation to be better at this? And they said, let's see what we can do with virtual reality. They launched the virtual reality program, and this is one where you're having a very difficult conversation with somebody who is at risk. And those 22% scores went up to 97%. And when you think about being in the seat of a training or learning and development leader, and how difficult it is to cut through everything and get people engaged and focused for a 30-minute experience, the idea of all of a sudden, here's a technology that can do that, and 97% of the people love it, is totally earth-changing.
Welcome to Air Force Sexual Assault Prevention and Response Virtual Reality.
On one of our programs around sexual assault and prevention, where the conversations, you're having a conversation with a victim, and that person is looking for some advice on how to take a next step related to reporting the incident. And this is something that is a very complicated thing, and that without having the confidence in giving the right, knowing the right things to say, and without being comfortable in having that conversation, mistakes can happen and big impacts can happen on people's lives because of those. And again, they had been training this with PowerPoint, they've been training this with classroom lecture, and it just wasn't working. And then they looked at this and said, what if we did this in virtual reality? We want people more confident having this conversation. We want people to retain the information so that they're giving the right information. And we saw that program get deployed, and we saw the metrics that came out. 180% more confident. Retention up 140%. And program after program after program, we see these KPIs come out where it just blows away expectations of anything that training leaders had had the ability to deploy before.
Restricted reports at SAPR are confidential.
So I just go there and I tell them what happened? Do I have to tell them everything, or... I don't know. I don't know if I can do that.
Welcome to Speak Up, an opportunity to practice having tough conversations about race.
At the beginning of this year, we had an incredible opportunity, which was we got connected with the National Urban League with the goal of looking at the challenge of how can innovation technology help the challenges related to diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workplace. And the National Urban League is just a pillar institution of the last 100 years of America. The work that they have done in one area after another has changed so many lives, that the idea that they were coming to us with their mission, they say, we've got our mission, we need to get it out there in a better way. And that virtual reality could be that way was an incredible responsibility that was brought to us. And we started this process of thinking about, well, what is, we've done a lot of difficult conversations in a lot of different areas. The challenges of diversity, equity, and inclusion are so huge and so massive, and race in America is the issue. With something so nuanced, how are we going to be able to do this and be able to do it right? And the answer that we had was that no one person could do this right. The only way that this could be successful is by building a community and taking the idea of authorship away from the concept of a story and letting kind of the tools that we had been developing, letting those tools be an opportunity for a community to write a story. And some members of this community were chief diversity officers. And the input that so many of them had was what's top of mind, top of goals for the year was around equity in hiring. And the thing that we would hear again and again and again is that when it comes to hiring, there's subjective decision making happens. That somebody doesn't get the job because they're not the right cultural fit. And it's baffling because everything that you hear about organizations is that everybody wants to be data driven. They want to be making objective decisions. And then you actually dig in on the most important decisions that are being made for our society, and they're being made for subjective reasons. And this idea of what if there was a way where somebody could go through an experience, somebody who may be making subjective decisions on a daily basis and not even knowing it, and by going through this experience could see that, oh, what I think is objective is actually not objective. Or somebody who works with somebody who's making subjective decisions, who doesn't want to be doing it. They're not trying to do the wrong thing. But if somebody were to actually come to them and ask them questions about why they were making decisions, it might be an opportunity for a light bulb to go off. And so in the experience that came out of this process, it's one where you are on a hiring committee. There's two candidates who you interview. One is white, one is black. The black candidate has better objective qualifications, but then you start the experience meeting with 3 other people on the hiring committee, and all 3 of them want to hire the white candidate. And their reason why is because the loudest person in the room thinks he's a better cultural fit. And we've heard from so many people as this program has been getting deployed all over the country of, wow, I've been in that room, I've seen that, I've had that conversation. It felt like I was just reliving something I had lived through before. And then you go into it and you get a chance to talk to each one of those characters. And you get a chance to meet with them and talk to them on their own terms, but also a chance to learn some questions to ask to get them to open their mind about their own thinking and acknowledge things like, acknowledge the fact that race is part of making this decision. And that is a very, very difficult conversation to have with somebody. And when you look at workforces abroad, that is not a question that people have an easy time asking. And so as this program was getting developed, one of the big parts was looking at what are the KPIs. And a big KPI was people are uncomfortable with this conversation. It's being trained with PowerPoint. The PowerPoint isn't getting through to people. We've got to have a tool that gets people more confident and more comfortable having this difficult conversation. And as it comes together, you get to have conversations with 3 people, and you get to watch their minds change as you ask them the questions that open up their thinking. And in that process of having 3 difficult conversations and learning some tools and techniques for how to get somebody to open their mind, you improve your own confidence in having this difficult conversation. And the results that we see are incredible, both on a quantitative and qualitative level. For the improvement of confidence, 180% improvement of confidence in having a difficult conversation about race in the workplace. That's an incredible thing for something that's such a difficult conversation. Other thing is the things that people say after they go through the experience. One of them was, there was stuff in there that I never would have said, but after going through that experience and saying those words out loud, I actually feel like I could say them in the real world, and I could really make things better by actually saying them. And that is the type of behavior change that you can't get that from e-learning, you can't get that from PowerPoint, you can't get it from classroom lecture. You can only get it by giving people the opportunity to practice these difficult, world-changing conversations where when you think about systemic change and you think about it has to happen at the micro level, it has to happen at the transaction level, and you think about organizations, the transaction in every organization is the conversation. And if you think about what it means if you were able to change the tone of conversation and conversation and conversation at a micro level, but change it at scale, that's a recipe for real systemic change. And it is so inspiring to watch as people are seeing this and becoming advocates for it and evangelizing for it, because the thing that we keep hearing is there is a need for this technology, and there is a need for more people to know about its power. And we feel so lucky that as we've kind of watched this grow over the years, we've been able to transition from let's solve this hard problem of how to make this technology work to let's shepherd this technology out into the world and watch brilliant people do brilliant things with it. And every time we see this program deploy again, and we hear those types of things, and we hear the positive impact, and we hear the change that is happening from people doing these experiences, it gives us immense satisfaction of knowing that when new technology comes to the world, people can do good with it. There's so much, cynicism around technology, and it's so easy for people to write about the bad things about technology. We're sitting here and we get a chance to be in a seat where we see one person after another do something good with technology, and it is really life affirming to watch this happen.
I'm Mark Morial, President and CEO of the National Urban League. Virtual reality has the ability to help you create a more diverse and inclusive work environment. Virtual reality is the future of training and will be with you on this journey as you lead your organization's diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives.
Kevin Cornish, that was an amazing talk. I really appreciate it. I know the audience really appreciates it too.
Oh, thanks so much. And thanks so much for everything that you're doing to drive, immersive and virtual reality. And, what I love about the ecosystem is watching it grow over the years. And it's exciting to see everything you guys are doing.
Yeah, the goal is just to keep expanding the XR community so that people understand the technology better and what we're able to do with it. And the insight you provided was amazing. So let me kick things off with one quick question. As an Emmy-nominated director and a founder of your own XR studio, what do you see as some of the opportunities in VR that nobody else is really taking advantage of?
Yeah, there's so when we think about what's kind of the most powerful thing that happens in VR, it's when you go in and you have a human connection, and that face-to-face conversation is something that the more people do it, the better that they get at it. There's a really, really interesting use case that a company's doing where there's a promotion process, and you have to take a test that's an oral test. So you talk through with your instructor about your knowledge of the subject matter. And something that happens is people get nervous during tests. And when they get nervous, they don't come across as intelligent, and they may know the information, they may master the information, but just because they're not confident in the way that they may present, because they're nervous talking to a boss or talking to somebody who has some authority figure over them, they don't perform that well. And so what they're doing at this one is they're giving kind of using virtual reality to allow people to rehearse and practice taking the tests, so that then when they get in front of the real instructor, those nerves can go away and they can feel comfortable because they've already had the practice. And what's so inspiring to me about that is that that's something where the people that this has an impact on are people who are frontline workers, maybe getting promoted from their first position into a supervisor position. And that's something that changes their life and it changes their family's life. And it's the idea that virtual reality can have that kind of change is one of the most exciting things. And the other thing that's super exciting about this one is it wasn't our idea. This was something that somebody saw the technology and they were like, oh, this would be a great way for us to use it. And the more that we see the community adopting virtual reality, the more light bulbs go off, the more excited people get, and then the more use cases that get invented.
That's cool. And sort of following up on that, from your experience, what percentage of the companies that you talk to actually have a VR program plan for 2022?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. And so much of it has to do with, where technology has been kind of evolving over the years, where a few years ago, virtual reality was a cool idea to do. And then you look at kind of 2021, there've been so many different case studies across so many different areas of Fortune 500 that there's real ROI story. So for customers that are adopting it, they're adopting it based on data, not based on wouldn't it be cool if, which is what it was like a few years ago.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that's happening is with the metaverse, everybody's kind of, you think about adoption curves, you think about the early adopters have been excited about virtual reality, but what about that middle? And what are the things that move the needle for the middle? And when people see, wait a minute, this is Facebook's rebranding to be a metaverse company. Apple is putting so much investment in, Google, and you see the most valuable companies in the world see this as their next technology platform. Well, if you're at any other company and you know that your technology adoption is key to the success of the future of your company, well, you have to step back and say, well, what are we doing to play in this space? And what we're seeing, we work with a lot of Fortune 500 companies, and what we're seeing with these companies is them saying, we've explored virtual reality in the past, but now we actually put a task force on it. And we've said we need to have our strategy, and we need to make some decisions about our solutions. We need to get this kicked off in 22. So, I'd say we're seeing kind of 20 to 30% of the companies already have some kind of active programs going, and probably about half have the intention of getting something live in the next year.
Mm-hmm. Let's turn to the audience. Keith wants to know, as a filmmaker, what do you see as the potential of volumetric cinema?
Yeah, volumetric cinema is certainly the future, because what a lot of the stuff that happens now is VR is a first-person storytelling medium. So you go in, you're the main character of the story. Because of the limitations now when it comes to video, you pretty much have to kind of stay in one place to kind of experience it. With volumetric, the ability to move becomes possible, where you can walk around and if you're at a party, you're walking from like one person to another person. Being able to switch and have multiple conversations within the same scene requires volumetric. The other thing, when you think about volumetric, is that when you look out and think about the metaverse, it's really, there's a world that's the virtual world, and then we look into that world based on what screen we're looking at. So some people are going to be looking at it on flat screens, some people are going to be on their phones, some people are going to be on headsets. But anything that you're making, you make the virtual world, but it's got to work for all the different screens that people are, or the windows that people are looking into it at. So the versatility of, when you look at augmented reality, to have video, it's got to be volumetric, just because the little movements of the phone will kind of, it falls apart if it's just a flat video. And so that's where the versatility from platform to platform is where we see volumetric being so important.
Cool. Tamika wants to know, in your experience, what are the pluses and minuses of virtual empathy versus real life empathy?
Yeah, this is very interesting. The concept of empathy is very is a very interesting concept, because it's so hard to measure. And it also so when we talk to customers, it's really, really important, if they're going to launch a program, that it's not going to be a one-off, that they're going to launch a program that's going to get be a great success story for them so that they can grow their program and it becomes a long-term sustainable program. And for that to happen, there has to be data, and there has to be a way that they can numerically show, we tried to do this, we used virtual reality to do it, and virtual reality outperformed the KPIs. And so with empathy, that's a really, really difficult thing to measure. But what we can measure is that we know that there are things that when you say them, you're expressing empathy towards somebody. On the contrast, if you say something else, you may be minimizing them. You may be a judgmental statement with them, you're saying a microaggression. So when we look at kind of measurements on topics related to empathy, we're really looking at what are the things that people are saying or not saying in phrasing that relates to empathy. So it's not quite answering that exact question about virtual empathy versus empathy in the real world, but it's more about, for us, it's giving people tools to recognize when they're saying something empathetic versus when they're saying something judgmental.
Yeah, that makes sense. So here's one from Alice, and Alice wants to know, this is kind of a toughie, how can we ensure that VR breaks through systemic problems rather than reinforcing them?
Yeah, and that goes to kind of that same topic, where it's what we see as being really powerful in VR is the ability to practice having difficult conversations. And so if you think about what it is that you're practicing, and are you practicing good techniques, or are you practicing things that are reinforcing negative? It's all kind of, where's the content, and can you trust the content? And so for us, and really what I love about kind of having kind of been in virtual reality for a little while, developed some cool software, is that we're letting other people take those reins. And so we're going out to kind of the subject matter experts and letting them make the content, and we're just kind of the technology that supports it. And so, like with the diversity, equity, inclusion, the National Urban League is that trusted voice. So while it's our technology, it's their message. And so to that question about how to make sure that you're not reinforcing negative, look to who are the authors of the content, and who is it that's kind of making those decisions about what somebody's going to experience. And then can you trust, is that a voice that you trust?
Yeah. And then as a practical matter, I was wondering myself, in a VR experience, how do you go about measuring data, collecting data, and then using that to come up with a KPI?
Yeah, so first off, there are different types of conversations where there's different types of privacy that's really important. We do a lot of stuff with really sensitive conversations where it's things like, we have a suicide prevention program, we have a sexual assault prevention program. A lot of these conversations around race are extremely sensitive. And so on those, if there's a feeling that you as the individual are being tracked, then that's going to create a paranoia, and you're not going to feel comfortable in the experience. So they're anonymous at the individual level, and then they're tracked at the macro level. So the data that's coming out is data about behavior of groups, not data about the behavior of individuals. And the way that we track it is kind of a few different ways. One is, in the conversations, you can phrase things in different ways, like I said, with kind of the microaggressions versus the empathetic phrasing. And then there's a scoring system that is associated with each kind of thing that you say. And then there's an empathy score. that comes out of that. And that's just kind of the math around over the course of this 30-minute conversation. These are the number of microaggressions. These are the number of empathetic statements that were made. And then those can be measured across different groups. So that's one way. The other way is just pre and post survey. So questions before about how confident are you, or how comfortable are you, or whatever those kind of topics are that are important to the organization, and then post those same questions. And then the other way that's really exciting is things around retention and things around long-term retention. So when you look at Kirkpatrick model of like what do they remember today after they did the training, but what do they remember in 3 months? That's really important. Another one is the ability to just demonstrate competencies. So this is something where you may go through a training in the first half, this is teaching you how to do something, and then you're put into a situation where you have to show that you can do it. And then that's what gets measured. And then really the most important one is measuring behavior change, because for any customer that's buying a technology related to learning, they're not interested in buying the technology. They're interested in buying the improved behavior that comes out from their teams using the technology. So there we're doing studies around, and this goes to the idea of identifying the KPIs, but there's one of them that's related to reporting. And so doing year-over-year studies over after the virtual reality was launched, did the reporting go up? And so those can be kind of for things around like safety incidents. So where there's kind of a desire to learn more about what's happening sooner. Are people flagging red flags sooner after having gone through the virtual reality? So looking at that real world behavior change.
That's amazing. I think change is really the objective, right? On behalf of the global XR community, I want to thank you for spending the morning with us and providing your really wonderful insights into this VR future that we're all getting into. Thank you so much, Kevin.
Thank you so much, and thanks everybody for it's a community that's going to make this technology as amazing as it's going to be in the future. So appreciate being a part of it.